Hello and welcome to Cool Coffee with Kansas Principals. By and for school administrators, this podcast is intended to promote candid discussion and insight about our great profession. My name is Rick Sola, and as Communications Director for the Kansas Principals Association, I am the host, but I am certainly not the feature. Sit back, take a sip, and enjoy. This is Cool Coffee with Kansas Principals. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to Cool Coffee with Kansas Principals. I'm here today with two amazing Kansas educators who are in their final weeks before retirement calls here in June. I have Mr. Mike Wiley, friend of the show, on the show before multiple times in Principal Perspective. Mike taught fifth grade for 3 years in Wamego, then moved to the Metro, teaching 9 years of middle school math at Lexington Trails in DeSoto under Dr. Schmidt's mentorship, our other guest here in just a minute. From there, he served 2 years as associate high school principal in Turner, 6 years as principal in Basehor-Linwood, and is now wrapping up 11 years at the California Trail Middle School as California Trail Middle School principal here in Olathe. Mike, welcome back.
Thank you, Rick. It's good to be back and good to see some familiar faces as we're recording with cameras. I'm pretty glad we're not on camera for this, but it's good to see you too.
You know, when you were on the show before, that was a specific decision not to go live with video podcasting, just audio. So, no, it's great to have you back, Mike. And Mike and I go way back, good buddy here. But then also I'm joined with, by Dr. Mark Schmidt. And he's worked 5 years as middle school social studies teacher and coach at Hillsboro Middle School in Hillsboro, Kansas, and was Auburn Washburn Rural in Topeka, Kansas, before moving into school leadership as a middle school assistant principal in the Goddard School District outside of Wichita. At the end of his career, his fiancee from Topeka suggested that they should live in the same zip code, which led to an opportunity to open the new Southwest Junior High in Lawrence, Kansas. And after 5 years as an assistant, he was honored to accept the Lexington Trails Middle School principalship in DeSoto, Kansas, where he spent 9 rewarding years working with incredible staff, including Mike Wiley. At that point, he was looking for a new adventure and was named the Director of Human Resources in DeSoto before accepting a role of overseeing special education and special services in the Blue Valley School District. After 16 years, he is retiring as Assistant Superintendent of Special Education and is in his 38th year in public education. Dr. Schmidt, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm honored that you asked.
Yeah, it's awesome to really have you both on here, and just reading both of your bios and knowing where you're at here. We're recording this, it's April 29th, so there's literally just weeks left of the school year, and in both of your cases, weeks left of two fantastic careers. And so I'm just going to start right here with how does it feel on April 29th when you are weeks away from retirement?
I'll jump in first. Mark kind of gave me a nod there. I would say it feels kind of surreal, right? People are asking, are you counting down the days and those kind of things? I don't really have time for that. And the fear in the back of my mind is that someone would accuse me of counting down the days, right? So I'm focused on each day. It is strange. Last night we had our incoming sixth grade parent night, and so we had about 200 kids and their parents into the building. And as we were doing that, I was co-hosting that, if you will, with the new principal, and so been spending a lot of efforts to try to help make her transition as smooth as possible. And so I really think that maybe mid-June I'll start processing a little bit more how that's going. But right now it's just kind of strange.
Yeah, Mike, I agree with you. The most common question is absolutely, are you counting down the days? Do you have a calendar where you're crossing them off, or a chain where you're tearing it apart? And there's just no time for that. You know, as you try to think about how do you get ready for the next person to come in to continue on, and so that they can be successful. It's just a lot to do. And then I just thinking back on, the last time that I had any extended period off, I've been on a 12-month contract now for 20 some years. And so you kind of get out of the notion of shutting it down for any extended period of time. And that's going to be an adjustment for sure.
Mike, you mentioned the fifth grade night or incoming sixth grade night yesterday, and you had your person following you up here with you, and how was that? I mean, you've got to kind of step aside, but it's still your building, and I'm sure you're the familiar face, and there's probably a lot of intentionality that you had to take going into that evening yesterday. And trying to find the appropriate balance, kind of talking through that. I know there's other people in your shoes, and how did that go for you? What did you think about last night?
Well, I think if anybody knows me, they know I probably talked too much last night at that meeting, and could have done a better job of trying to balance. Letting Mrs. Rice. So my successor, actually, when I came here to California Trail, she was an English teacher here, and taught for 3 years with me, and was my BLT lead, and I've been a huge fan, a proponent for her in her administrative career, and I'm excited to hand the baton to her, if you will. But we have a good relationship, and have known each other even longer than that. As another tie to Dr. Schmidt is that Heather's husband works in DeSoto at DeSoto High School, where our building of Lexington Trails led right into DeSoto High. So we've known. I've known Heather and her husband for a long time, and I think it's going to be a great transition. But for last night, it was different. We're kind of tag teaming that event, and I'm talking about what we currently do, and she's sharing some of the excitement for next year and some of those kind of things. So hopefully we did a pretty good job of that, and we both left with a smile on our face, and it looked like most parents left a little bit more relieved, knowing more about the building and how the transition is going to work for their kids.
I'm sure that's a really powerful message to just kind of silently convey. They see both of you working in tandem, side by side. It's nice to know that there's some work behind the scenes to have a seamless transition, if you will. Mark, on your side, is your successor in place or announced, or is that in progress? Or
Yeah, absolutely. We have Dr. Ashley Entz, who is currently a special ed administrator within Blue Valley. And so she's been named Executive Director of Special Education. And once again, I had the ability to recommend her for the position. She is absolutely prepared for the job. I'm excited to see, where she's going to take it from here. I'm sure Mike would agree with me. Being in a position for an extended period of time, you kind of know the things that you've accomplished, but you also know the things that haven't been accomplished yet. And the organization sometimes just needs new eyes to take a look and to figure out, what are the priorities in order to move forward. And I'm absolutely excited to see where she takes it.
Mark, that's a pretty good comment of the things that maybe you leave on your desk each night, right? We administrators do that every day. We get through as much as we can, and there's always the stack at the end of the day, and you have to prioritize some of those kind of things. So it is really interesting, and I'm interested to watch too how some of the things that I'm maybe not as good at, right? Or I don't allocate my time for those things that maybe Mrs. Rice will be able to do and take this building to the next level in that area, which is exciting to get to step back and watch too. I agree.
So, kind of a question on some reflection, just you've both had multiple positions. You've had multiple even roles in a district, in a school and whatnot. But looking back, what moments or experiences most shaped the kind of educator that you became? Mike's pointing at Mark.
Man, there are so many different times. I would say one of the biggest was early in my career when I moved from Goddard to Auburn or to Lawrence to open up Southwest middle school or junior high at the time. Dr. Bransky, who was a mentor of mine, when I moved in there, we had so much to do together. Both of us continued on in our current jobs, myself in Goddard, and she was a high school assistant principal. And so what that meant was we were building the system that spring on the phone in the evenings. And then I would come back up to Lawrence on the weekends, and we'd work Saturday and Sunday trying to put things together. And there was so much to do that she pretty much just handed me things. And she told me at one point, her philosophy was, if you have somebody that's capable and wanted to do something, let them do that, because that was part of professional development. And I've kind of carried that forward with myself, whether you call it delegation or whether you call it, mentorship. I think that, you have to look for those opportunities to give people that are within your sphere a chance to grow, or else, they'll get stagnant.
So kind of to that point, sorry, Mike, I know you've got something, but I'm thinking about someone who might be listening to this who's earlier in their career. Did you find that hard? You heard that and it resonated, but was that hard to do, to let go? You said to let go of some things and kind of delegate out.
Well, let go may be too strong of a term. I have difficulty completely letting go, as Mike might attest. But what you do is you kind of give parameters, and you let people have ownership. Yet at the same time, it's still your responsibility to follow through and to do that. But it's also, when you give something to somebody to do, that's an opportunity to coach. That's what Dr. Bransky did for me. I would bring things back, and she would say, hey, this is great. What do you think about? And then would give me another, something that maybe the project wasn't quite as complete as I thought it was. And it helped me develop that sense of when something was done, or what's the high standard that we have to meet for our community. Because, in every single community I've been in, the parent expectations were high, and those expectations helped us do better.
Right. Great.
I love that, Mark. And when I think about, those experiences and things that helped shape me as an educator, I do think back, early in my career as, in Wamego in elementary, I was the only guy, right? And so I kind of felt like I was edged towards some leadership with site council and some of those kind of things. But really when you, thankfully, thank you, sir. When you hired me all those years ago, I think that at times I'm pretty headstrong. Somebody that knows me would know that too. But
Really?
headstrong.
Really? Wow.
I think at some points that Mark, you may have kind of said, Mike, if you're so passionate about this, try this, and I failed in some times, and I look at that, but I would say that you absolutely coached me through that, and early in my career, I would snap to decisions a lot quicker and things like that, and that was a piece that your mentoring for me really helped me grow quite a little bit, even though it probably looked like baby steps while we were together in DeSoto. I do look back to some of those things as really shaping me, and then helping push me to be the type of administrator that helped do the same type of coaching or mentoring with staff members that I'm working with. And I think that's probably one of the things that I enjoy the most is really seeing leadership capability grow in others on our staff, whether that's someone that wants to be a lifelong teacher, or someone that wants to take that next step into administration, or into curriculum and development, whatever it is, but helping them get where they want to be is so rewarding. So I hope that I gave you some of that reward as well for as many of the headaches that I gave you.
Well, Mike, actually, the headaches it was pretty easy to, you know, to excuse the headstrongness or the ambition that you were showing at the time, because it reminded me a lot of myself back when I was 27 and I took on my first assistant principalship. You know, I hate to admit it, but it's true. I probably knew exactly what the administration should be doing when I was in the teacher role. And I would look at what they were doing, and it's like, why would they do that? If I was in that role, I would be doing something, drastically different, and it would be so much better. And what I found is, once you're in the role of responsibility, all of a sudden you start to understand some of the caution that administration was taking, or some of the rationale for it. And you can't simulate responsibility, and once you have it, you start to get, oh well, that's why they were doing it that way. I don't know, Mike, if you agree that that's kind of been your experience as well.
100% agree, and I feel like that's why I feel like I am much more intentional now, in year 19 of administration than I was in years 1 through 10 or whatever, in being intentional about the why behind things that I'm doing. And especially with like my building leadership team or my lead teachers, I want them to have that understanding of why we do different things. I want them to hear different perspectives, so that when they're out after the meeting and they're standing by their car talking with their buddies, and buddies are like, ah, yeah, right. No, well, have you ever thought of this? Or so-and-so's perspective was this. It takes all of those little grain of sand annoyances that your staff have, and by giving them those reasons, the reasoning behind stuff, it kind of takes that away before it becomes a blister. And so I think it's time well spent for your culture of your building, and people that feel valued and feel part of the process. They just want to do better and want to keep doing great things for kids. And so that's been I think that's been something I've learned along the way too.
And this has been such an awesome exchange, and I've jotted a few things down. First of all, headstrong or ambition. I like that. I mean, that's a really positive way to spin it.
There's nothing wrong with ambition.
That's right.
It all of us have a little ego that are in these chairs.
No, I love that. And then Mark, you just said, you can't simulate responsibility, and kind of in the conversation of coaching, which, I think we all have that background, and that is a ton of fun to coach. And I personally have really enjoyed the coaching aspect of someone who might be aspiring to be an administrator. But you're right. We could do scenarios, and we could try to put, think opportunities together, but to truly simulate responsibility is a challenge. But one thing I was thinking of is, so many times I've had the privilege to talk to so many different educators, mostly principals, and there's been so many references on this show about the person who may have tapped them on the shoulder and just kind of gave them the bug for, have you thought about administration, or may had an impact that didn't lead to a trajectory. I don't think I've ever had the two people on the show together, which I feel like I have right now with Mike and Dr. Schmidt, who hired Mike, which, here in Olathe, we can have a lot of fun. You're the one that hired Mike.
Yeah, sorry guys.
Yeah. No, but just really, really cool to hear the banter between both of you, and I can just see like the reminiscing that's going on, the shared history that you both have. So just really a lot of fun. So kind of thinking either this next question kind of either on the positive side or negative side, but what changes in students or in education have you seen over the years that has surprised you the most?
I don't remember who said it, originally, but we've been going to hell in a handbasket for a long time without getting there. I think, I remember folks that were probably my age when I was, in my 20s, that would talk about, kids today and how they just weren't what they were before. And, I hear from some of my peers kind of the same things. And I think it's those colored glasses of how we think about our, what it was like back when we were there. And it's not so much reality because, if we talk about kids, I think about the amazing things kids are doing today that I can't even imagine myself doing back when I was their age. So I guess I'm more optimistic about the future, as far as kids go, than before. However, the culture that we're swimming in is a little bit different now than what it was. And I, having led through the COVID years, I think there was a switch that happened at that point.
What would you say? Yeah, you mentioned a switch, and Mike and I are nodding our heads, which doesn't translate on an audio podcast, but certainly I would totally agree with that. From your perspective, what kind of switch did you really notice post COVID years?
I think about that time. I'll give you an example. Right now I work in special education, and prior to COVID. I had 2 formal complaints in the prior 10 years. Okay. Since COVID, I think I've had 30. And it has, that's not to say that the complaints that people are making aren't valid or aren't things that we need to address or things like that. But it just, folks seem to be a little more willing to, instead of engage in problem solving, to go into the proving that I'm right. And when I say this, I have tremendous respect for our parents. In fact, I would say 98% are fantastic. They're incredible supporters. They are, excellent as far as pushing us to do better, but also doing it in a very respectful way. It's just that small group that might be, raising some concerns, sometimes legitimate, but not going through that interpersonal, problem-solving problem, has probably grown just a little bit, and that takes up a lot more time than what it did several years ago. And Mike, I don't know if you see the same thing or not.
I absolutely do. I think that it's it's our society. It's very easy to punch on school personnel, verbally punch on people. And, I don't think that I necessarily saw that as much early on. I think we were, seen as a little bit more the, the authority and the experts that we really are. And we still are those experts and those kind of things. And it just, that ability to be open to conversation has deteriorated a little bit. And I hope we come back to that, right? I think that, a lot of our society, I was thinking more around along the lines of technology and the changes I've seen in the classroom, how that's changed classrooms. But I think it's very much applicable to what you were sharing, is that it's also changed, how we hear about things that maybe we misstepped, or maybe even more often, things that have been misperceived, and things like that, where we used to hear those face to face or over the telephone, maybe in an email. Now it's just put out there for everyone on on Facebook, on Snapchat, whatever it may be, and it's just everyone we. It's just very easy to throw those things out there, and we're in a situation where we don't punch back, right? And so we'll work with that particular person, but that's already out there. Whatever they put out on social media and things are out there, and that makes our job tougher, right? It makes us wear it probably a little differently than I wore it 15 years ago, for sure.
Yeah, I got to say, I don't know about you, but my skin's a little tight, a little tougher these days than it was before. But it's not, I don't want to paint our, administrators as victims by any stretch, because, still being the leaders, in fact, I would say that the skills that most administrators bring to the job are more important today than they've ever been. The ability to sit down with anybody and listen to any point of view, and try to actually listen to the person to get their perspective, but then to share your line of thinking, why you decided what you did. Not to convince a parent or a teacher or whoever it is you have the disagreement with that you're right, but rather just to explain why you're deciding the way you are. And what I find is the vast majority of times you walk away with respect for each other's position, even though you might not agree with each other. And when you can do that, I think that's the win. And really that's the goal, in today's society, because too often we try to pound on each other until we win. And that shouldn't be our goal. It should be understanding.
And I think that if we boil it down to one skill that you must be better at than most people around you, it's the ability to listen, right? Because if you can sit down with someone that's that has a grievance or has a concern, and you can hear them out, and they believe that you're listening to them, 90% of the job is listening and making them feel heard. Like you said, and then you're able to, share what was running through your mind or why you came to that decision. That's so key, that listening. And if you're an aspiring administrator out there, that's the skill to get really good at. Oftentimes we want to be the problem solvers, but first we have to be the listeners.
Yeah, and not to take it personally, if some of the listening feels directed at you.
Yeah.
It's that little bit of a thicker skin to be able to absorb that, and then to be able to respond to it appropriately. That's where you really earn that respect of folks around you.
Yeah. I oftentimes think that, oh my gosh, they must have got cut off in the drive over here, and they're upset with somebody that cut them off in traffic. Or I trick myself into saying, oh, this is the reason that they're acting this way, and it helps.
Well, and sometimes we do find out there is a reason, or if you hit the pause button or you're not able to respond, sometimes it's nice to allow some distance of time to occur. And then when you do get in contact with them, they've settled down, or you've had the conversation, and, it's not uncommon even to get either an apology or a, hey, I was cut off in traffic. I was really heated. I just found this, and you kind of get those things. But I really like the point about the skills that are required, necessary for an effective principalship or an effective principal, and that they're even more important right now. I mean, Mike, you were talking about the way of which we learn of things, and in the past it was, a phone call or someone's in the office when you get to school, maybe an email. Oftentimes it's not coming directly to us. It's being, you get a screenshot perhaps from somebody on your staff or a spouse or whatever, and you see something that's kind of blowing up, and it never even made it to you. You never even found out. And so, yeah, certainly a change. I want you to think about, you have both impacted literally thousands and thousands of students over your careers. As you think about the students that you've impacted, either academic or life lesson, what's something that you hope your impact, that they will carry with them as a result of you crossing their educational path?
I think at different stages of my career, I think that students might have different things, right? I think maybe early on it was we work hard, right? We're gonna work hard and we're gonna get the reward for that. I think now, in the last few years, as I think about students, it's the thing that I really want them to understand is that they get to choose every day what their attitude is. And I choose every day to greet kids in the parking lot and get them into the building safe. I wave at parents. I see that as kids are standing there waiting with me and for cars to pass, and I get them across. I'm leaving probably 95% of them with the same phrase every day, and it's "make it a great day." I share with them why it's "make it a great day." I write, usually early in the year to my parents about the word "make," and that mindset, that intentionality about, hey, no matter what I'm bringing in, I can choose moving forward. And I hope that I leave that with students. And I've heard from a few over the last few years that's one thing that they're taking from me, and I think that's a good one, right? The world needs more people that will choose to will choose their attitude in a positive manner, and then go out and interact in that world in that way. Hopefully, choosing kindness a little bit more along the way as well.
Mike, you made me very jealous of, stepping into the role that I'm in now in district office. I have a lot less interaction with students, and I miss that ability to work with a student, and especially a student that might have made a poor decision, and then help them reconsider about maybe there's a better way to do that, and change things moving forward more than just the penalty phase of that conversation. In my current role, and then when I was in HR as well, you're working more with adults who then work with kids. And so I always try to model engagement. I always try to, make sure that people have access to me, make sure that I'm returning phone calls. That the worst thing we can do to people that are reporting up through us or that we work with, I think, is to ignore, to not return an email, not return a phone call, because that sends a message, and that message is that you're not worthy of my time, and I never want that to be the case, which is, and what I hope is, they walk away with just the importance of engagement, and that it's important to connect amongst each other because you're all in it together.
Love that.
Yeah. As we kind of transition here to kind of the lighter side of where you're both at in your career here, I mentioned April 29th. That's when we're recording this. You're about to step into retirement. Are there some hobbies that you're really excited to get into, or to discover or rediscover that you both mentioned, and anybody listening to this knows how busy the job, both of your jobs are. We all have things we're super interested in, and our abilities to totally connect in that, it varies from time to time, and maybe is put on hold. What are you really looking forward to stepping back into, or starting as a result of some new time?
Mike, you've got the hobbies, man. I'll let you take it from here.
Well, I've got the hobbies, and I'll just remind you, I'm a little younger than you. So, I don't,
Thanks, Mike.
you knew it was coming at some
Oh
point.
yeah,
You know, I would say that, I do intend to continue to work, and so not necessarily a hobby, but maybe a different, a different form of vocation. My wife's a realtor. I'm going to get my license, and I'm going to jump in to that world with her and kind of help her with her business, and hopefully building that business. I'm excited for the little bit of flexibility that will come with that. And some of that flexibility will allow me to get to my hobby. I have a farm about an hour from here, and I have a sawmill on the farm, and so I have the ability to go out, pick a tree off the farm, and cut it down and mill it up, and then ultimately, make a table or a bench or something like that for family, or possibly sell that for a few bucks. And so, but that is so different than what we do on a daily basis, right? It's I say it's a little bit of a metaphor. You're cutting open a tree, you have no idea what's on the inside. When you're working with a student, you have no idea what's going on inside either, or even a staff member. And so I think there's some parallels, but the physical work I'm looking forward to. I'm hoping, maybe I'll drop a pound or two. I doubt it, but a guy can hope. And so that's a hobby, I guess, that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, Mike, you say I'm not going to work. I actually am going to be doing some things after this, but it is going to be at a different pace. Like right now, I still live in Lawrence, Kansas, and it's about a 50-minute drive each way. So what I'm really looking forward to is not making that drive. But I think there are going to be some opportunities to do some consulting, maybe with some different state departments of education, working on special ed complaints, or even working with local districts and helping them work through some from various issues. I'm excited to do that at a little more intentional pace that's dictated by choices I make rather than things that are happening outside of my realm of control.
Well, and I have the advantage of knowing both your wife and my wife, and we're both going to have a heck of a list that we're going to be starting to work through. So
Yeah, that list is there, and my wife retired 3 years ago, and after 1 year, she heard that we had about 5 special ed positions open, and I convinced her to apply for one of them, and she was accepted, and she's been working here in the Valley for the last 3 years, and she's also retiring with me. I think what she's really excited about is being able to go visit places not dependent on the school schedule.
yes.
And so I'm hearing about these places that we're going to go, and I'm excited, and we'll just have to figure out how to pay for it.
So where will you both be in August?
Oh boy.
Because August is going to have a whole different feel, and with with the 12-month position, I'm sure I'm kind of speaking on principle terms when you come back in August, but
Yep.
The start of the year is the start of the year, but kind of that proverbial start of the year. Where will you both be in that July August ramp up of the school year?
Into July, we're taking a family trip to the Oregon coast. Going to spend a little bit of time there. Spend some time in the Columbia River Gorge. I was born in Portland, and so taking my youngest, my older 2 daughters have been there before, but taking my youngest to see the Oregon coast, and then like Multnomah Falls and that. And so that's going to be kind of our big trip this summer. We're still going to be on that school schedule with a 7th grader that's actually in Rick's building. Mark, I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah. No, I didn't.
So another connection.
I'm not looking forward to this newfound time that parent Wiley is going to have here at my building, but
He's going to hold you to the standard.
yeah, exactly.
I'm going to hand him a handful of, a list of ideas for him every time I drop her off in the morning and in that car loop. So I'll keep you on your toes, Rick.
Well,
Point out the trash in the bushes and things like that, right?
Yes.
yeah. Mark, do you have any intentional plans at that time of year?
Yeah. Well, so July 1, I'm flying out to Cape Cod. I'm meeting my brother, who's rented a place on a pond out there, actually. And he'll be fishing a few days before I get there, and then I'll join him for about three or 4 days before my wife joins me, and we're going to stay the rest of the week with my sister and one of her girls, and just figure out just relax a little bit, unplug, look forward to not receiving a ton of text messages or phone calls, and after that it's going to be a little bit of just setting things up and starting to build this business, and kind of working when I want to work, and I just knowing myself, I am going to have a little bit of that drive, and I'm going to want to put some things together, stay mentally engaged, and so I just kind of can't wait to see how things unfold.
Love that.
So here, kind of the last bit here, as we've had this conversation, there's been reference to a lot of the challenges, even the challenges and changes over time, the things that are presented to us daily, weekly, that weigh on our minds, that we bring home. And I'm picturing an aspiring or perhaps a new principal, but you also both stuck out really great careers and longevity in education through all those challenges. What advice would you give to someone who may be hearing this and like, oh man, there are just so much and things are changing, but there is a really amazing side of the jobs that you both do. What advice would you give to a principal who's got many years left?
You know, sitting in the chair of a principal or assistant principal, a principal, or even, you know, where I'm at here, it is such a privilege. You're able to make a difference in so many ways. You know, we all know what it's like to work for a bad boss, and when you can be somebody that's very supportive and you can help with growth and so forth, that makes it all that more meaningful. And you know, just thinking about how you can shape the world you're in, or you know, your corner of the world anyway. You know, get excited about that. You know, get excited about, you know, the things that you have control over, and then, you know, see those challenges as opportunity is really a key. And also, you know, just reflect back on the hard times that you've been through. You know, I can't tell you the number of times that I was facing a problem and I had no clue how to handle it. And even now, you know, things come up and it's like, ah, gosh, I don't know. But it's amazing that, you know, given a little bit of time, you know, in collaboration, what can be accomplished, and some of those things that seem to be insurmountable all of a sudden are in your rearview mirror, and you kind of can look back and say, you know what, we handled that pretty well. And I would say that's true for every position I've been in. I've watched other principals or other administrators go through it, and I like to remind them, hey, remember when you weren't sure what you were going to do here? How do you feel about it now? And typically you feel pretty good about it, and it's kind of a confidence boost about how you approach the next one. And so just remind yourself that process is there.
Yeah, it's really great.
Mark, as you're talking, over my right shoulder on that cabinet behind me, there's a sign that says, it's important to remember in times like these that there have always been times like these, right?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
it's like we can get through that. That's what resonated with me out of what you shared. For me, I went a different direction. For the last I don't know, 8 or 9 years here in Olathe, I've had the opportunity to mentor new middle school principals as they've come on, and I talk to each of them about the first thing that I tell them is that you have to make your family a priority, right? If you want to do the job well, you've got to have a healthy a healthy life at home, and you've got to be able to be able to give of yourself. You have to have something in your own bucket, and so I talk to them about, you know, finding that healthy balance, because if they don't have that, one of them's going to suffer, right? And you know, you want your family to be there through it all, and so even though you want to make a difference, and you want to be gung ho and all of that, don't fall in the trap of spending all that energy into the building without taking care of things at home. You know, and that's a challenge for everyone, and the three of us probably would point to times in our career where we're good at that and times that we're
Absolutely.
horrible at it. You know, I think of my wife as one of the most patient and you know, wonderful people in the world to put up with some of the stress that I come home with and I don't talk about, but boy, she knows that it's there because I'm a total grump, or I go and jump into bed and I'm out. It's like, leave me alone. I'm going to curl up for a bit. Um, and you know, those kind of things. And I think just finding that balance is pretty important. So that was kind of what I was thinking of when you talk about new advice.
Well, before we sign off, and I really appreciate both of your time today. We started earlier in this show here. We talked about the connection that you Mike had with Mark, and the fact that Mark hired you, and what's been really great, and I've kind of just picked up on, again, that reminiscing, but just that evident mentorship, and really what comes down to what it all boils down to in education, which is we are making an impact on people and students every day. And to see and hear a little bit of the impact that Dr. Schmidt had on a young Mr. Wiley. And so I want to spin this just a little bit, because Mr. Wiley had a tremendous impact on me. We got to meet each other when you joined Olathe. But if it were not for you, we would not be sitting here. I don't know if I've mentioned on this podcast before, but Mike is the reason why I'm involved in KPA the way I am. And so he reached out through a phone call and connected me with people. And next thing I know, I'm talking with Olathe. And, here I am on the board of KPA and now hosting a podcast for KPA. This never would have happened. And all the wonderful connections and opportunities that have then led, resulted from that since, and I'm only a couple weeks removed from a trip to DC, which was through involvement of KPA and different things. And Mike, we talk about impact. I've used a phrase here at my building, exponential impact. Exponential graph and what that can do. Cannot say enough for what you've done for me and my career. So I wanted to share that here. And when I'm done with this, I'm going to go back to bagging on you like I normally do.
I wouldn't expect anything different.
But I truly appreciate both of you and the time, and just a big sincere thank you from KPA for all that you've done all across Kansas. I'm reading your bios, and just the corners of this state that you each touched throughout your careers. There are just thousands of kids that are now adults, many of them, walking around impacted by what you brought. And so just truly and sincerely thank you for giving to education the way you did.
Thanks for having us.
Yes,
It's been a lot of fun.
absolutely. Yeah, thanks, Rick, and thanks for doing this for the state. I think it's a good way for people to connect, and a little bit of professional development, a few laughs along the way. I think you're doing a great job, and this is a worthwhile program that you're doing. And thanks for all the nice things. I'll expect a cold beverage next time we're together, because that would mean a lot more to me now.
I would expect nothing less as well, right? No. Absolutely. Again, thank you all, or thank you both, and have a good few weeks and enjoy the moments, because there's going to be a lot of moments, and I hope you get everything that's coming to you with all the wonderful people that you work with. So,
Thanks again.
check the notes section for more information on this episode and to learn more about the KPA and its mission to develop and support all principals through optimized learning, collaborative leadership, networking, and service. Be sure to check back in for our next episode and spread the word about Cool Coffee with Kansas Principals. Catch you next time.